welcome to this reel. I've just finished the first boss fight of Bravely Default 2 final demo and wanted to come here and tell you my thoughts and impression of the game. First off, right off the bat, I would like to say I didn't really like the final demo a lot, and a lot of their opinion has to do with these two reasons. Firstly, it had to do with the structure of the demo. This demo is unlike Square Enix demo of Octopath Traveller and Dragon Quest XI-S. Those demos starts you out at the start of the game and allows the save file to be transferred over to the main game when the full game was released. Instead, Bravely Default 2 final demo starts out just after the prologue and only limits your first playthrough to just 5 hours, which is definitely not my favourite demo structure, since I'm actively trying not to spoil myself. I don't know whether that is making any sense to you guys, but yeah, I just end up not really exploring much and just trying to hurry through the quest. I also felt very disconnected with the party, opting for the default builds for everyone, instead of experimenting with the job system like the old Bravely Default games. Speaking of the old Bravely Default games, my second reason had to do with my expectation of this game, especially since I only just recently finished its predecessors, the two Bravely Default games on the 3DS. I felt kind of whiplash in a way since there are quite a bit of differences between this game and its predecessors. I mean, not all the changes are bad, it just got a little bit hard to get used to the new changes. First change I kind of dislike is the removal of random encounters. I know in a vacuum it sounds extremely weird since random encounters are considered outdated game design and the bane of old JRPG games. But in the two Bravely Default games, they actually make random encounters very tolerable and enjoyable with the help of just one option, which is the random encounter slider, which just makes those two games extremely convenient, since you can dictate when it's a good time to grind levels and when it's a good time to just explore fast free. In Bravely Default 2 however, it is no longer a random encounter. Normal enemies just shows up on the map. By touching or swinging a sword at them, it will trigger a normal encounter, kind of like the modern Dragon Quest games. The main issue I have is that these enemies can be kind of hard to evade sometimes, especially since some dungeons have really narrow corridors and pathways. I would have loved to see the Radiant Historia approach, where if you strike an enemy with a sword, the enemy will just stop moving, giving you the option on whether you want to engage in battle or not. Another one of my complaints that goes hand in hand with not being able to control encounters is the fact that these encounters are no longer mere pushovers like the previous games. These encounters can be pretty tough, with multiple enemies present all at once, each having very different weaknesses and requiring different tactics to win. It often compounded the tedious feeling as you have to use multiple resources just to take these guys down. The second change has to do with the battle system. It is still a very similar battle system to the old games, with the signature Brave and Default commands here present and accounted for. The significant change has to do with the picking of moves and turn orders. In Bravely Default 1 and Bravely 2nd, you get to pick all your party commands all at once before the battle commences, with whoever speeds being the highest moving first. In this game however, you get to pick your commands before that member moves turn by turn, akin to the modern Dragon Quest games. Now, I will not comment on which battle system is effectively better, since I enjoyed both styles very much, as both system allows for interesting turn manipulation shenanigans, but as a returning player, it definitely caught me off guard with this new system. The third change I would like to highlight has to do with the UI. I'll just say as a returning player, all the UI elements felt extremely clunky and unintuitive. Even after playing for 3 hours, I'm still having trouble navigating through basic options, as well as just retrieving different information. I understand that since the Switch doesn't have two screens to even out the information, the UI has to be all on one screen. Another game that I also criticized for its UI and transition from the 3DS to Switch is Fire Emblem Three Houses, where the 3DS games have so much clearer UI and menus, so I can kind of get it in that regard. And of course, when the main game officially comes out, I'll have more time to get used to the UI elements and whatnot, where after a while it will no longer be an issue. But as of right now, at a quick glance, the UI felt very cluttered. Okay, let's actually talk about the game for a while. The job system is still the main focal point of the gameplay system. Forming a good synergetic team will be paramount if you want to do well in the game. There are more mechanics to take note of now, like the weight and chance of being targeted stats. I can really tell this is going to be very fun in the main game, as I try experimenting with lots of different builds. Also, it's worth mentioning that the difficulty of this demo is still pretty tough. Like I said before, even the normal encounters are not a pushover. For this one boss here, I struggled at least 3 times before coming up with a decent strategy to beat him, and I still had to burn lots of resources just to beat this one boss. I will not be sharing much about the story, as I said earlier I didn't pay much attention to the story or the NPCs in order to avoid spoiling the game for myself, and to be honest, the stories aren't really what I love about the Bravely Default games to begin with, especially since the first game pacing was horrible towards the last third of the game. About the presentation, I'm not really a big fan of the graphics. I mean, it definitely feels like an evolution from the predecessors on the 3DS, However, I think the art style suits the 3DS a lot more, with some locales really shining through on a smaller 240p screen. This is also a very big disappointment considering how gorgeous Octopath Traveller graphics was. One aspect of the visual that did transition well into Bravely Default 2 are the particles effect. It is really well done. Some textures here and there can really use some work, and in handheld mode the game can look a little bit blurry. Of course, the demo only covers a very small selection of towns and dungeons. Maybe in the later portion of the game there will be towns and landscape that will bring this unique art style to the forefront. And also, the game isn't finished yet. It can and will probably look a lot better when it officially comes out. The music is generally really good. I expect it to get a lot better the deeper I get into the game. I hope the actual game meets the high expectation and surpasses Bravely Default immaculate soundtrack. The voice acting is kind of a mixed bag though. Some of the voice acting can feel a little bit too much. Even more so than Bravely Default, which is saying something.
Alrighty, best go and have a wee word with the king then, eh?
Is that really such a good idea?
I honestly may just switch to the Japanese voice acting when I play it for real. Overall, I just want to say that even though I can clearly say I didn't enjoy my experience with the demo, I have full faith that I will enjoy the game when it comes out. This is the exact same experience that happened to me with Octopath Traveller. I didn't like the demo then, but ended up loving the actual game to death. None of my complaints listed here are actual deal breakers. I'm pretty sure once the game is released in February, I'll eventually get used to all the changes and enjoy the game for its own merit. I'm very excited to play this release. I'll definitely be making a review of Bravely Default 2 on this channel, so if you don't want to miss my opinion on this title, press the subscribe button, and if you want to hear my opinions on the first two Bravely Default games, you can check out these videos here. So long guys, so long.